As a city, Coventry has given us a place to flourish and thrive. We've now got to secure it for our children and their children after them. In this video, we'll continue to have those discussions, listening to stories from people who've lived here, from people who've thought about the city's future, and from people who are committed to securing the city as a diverse, multicultural and plural place for our children and the future to come.
I think if we talk about youngsters, the most important thing is to teach them to trust their intuition, because it's a phase of learning and there's a lot of information to take in, and because they learn from example, it's the only thing that they learn. If they see congruencies, this is how you do it. If they see incongruencies, this is not how you do it. But the feelings inside, it's something that they're trained to listen to much later. If from a young age they can open up to those feelings inside, I think they will learn much quicker and they can understand this kind of subjects much easier as well.
Minority faith communities have been here, 40, 50 years when you think about it? You know, since Second World War, the greater number of people from different religions, have come to Coventry and settled. It's quite an enriching experience, isn't it?
It's very enriching, but it's always, a minority faith tradition is almost always going to have a stronger expression of its faith because it's a way of securing its identity.
That's true.
The narrow stream has more energy in it than the broad stream.
I suppose it has to have, because it needs to keep alive.
Exactly.
And to survive, really. And I think it's also linked to culture, and it's also linked to one's upbringing and one's parents or whatever, what they've sort of taught you.
For me it was slightly different. I didn't come to Coventry because I had to. I wasn't running away from war, which is usually what immigration is caused by, or work. I came to Coventry because of the synagogue. I was learning about the synagogue when I was learning at the same time about Coventry. And when you start learning about something, it doesn't necessarily going to take you to positive ways, especially in Coventry, from where it started, learning how big it was before the war and how down it went after the war and how things changed here. So I had to kind of pick up on Coventry quite quickly to understand where this project actually takes me, because I wasn't restoring the synagogue because there was a need for a Jewish community in Coventry. It was just a case of seeing something old that was still there, and in my internal feeling there was a need in the surrounding area, because when you hear locals speak about Hebrews, Judaism, Israel, they just don't know, and they want to be exposed. So I was blessed with the opportunity to have people answer those questions from first hand, to come in and see. Coventry surprised me in that way, because I have traveled before that until I ended in England, to say, but I've never seen what happened in Coventry. People work together, and usually around the world when you meet different communities, they're all very stuck in their own ways. They're worried about their own resources. It's all about survival, so it's taking care of their own first. And suddenly in Coventry, I see communities that have resources. They look around and they say, well, we have passion to this city, and this building is in our city, so how can we help you? Rather than how things work in other ways, Coventry became a pioneer, showing other places how you can work. So I think there wasn't any better place for this building to be restored other than Coventry.
I'm very happy that we did come to Coventry. We could have gone elsewhere, anywhere in the UK. But what I think is very precious about Coventry is that we do have a very vibrant tapestry of people coming together from across the world, of all faiths and creeds. And I think that's why I really liked it. And when we do have problems like the riots, for example, recently, there wasn't anything in Coventry as such, and if there was anything, as people within that community would come together and look forward to solutions as to how we could help each other. And I always remember when I was teaching, we used to have something called the Coventry Square Mile. So within a square mile of the cathedral, we have a number of places of worship, and that's to do with communities coming to that particular area. But it's also about forging links and building not just places of worship, but also where communities can come together.
To your point, is that the cathedral was always at the centre of bringing different faith communities together. In the last 30, 40 years that I've been here, whenever there's been a need for different members of different faiths to come together, it was a cathedral that pulled them together. And that is something that I think is central to the cathedral.
The story of the cathedral, because the story of the ruined cathedral continues to model what happens when people can't get on. I mean, that's the thing that says if you can't work out your relationships, look what happens. Beauty gets exploded and destroyed. And so there's this visual model of reminder of what happens when people can't work out their differences. But then, because the new cathedral is alongside it, it always is this kind of continuation of a story of hope. So there's honesty leading to hope. And for me, one of the things that's striking about the new cathedral is it's a Christian building, but there's actually a lot of abstract art, particularly the glass, and most of the coloured glass is non-figurative in its design, so it allows people to kind of discover meanings in different ways. The cathedral also includes the Chapel of Unity, which was an explicit recognition that the Christian church is divided and was a way of kind of focusing prayer on that. But by the time I arrived in the cathedral 12 years ago, it seemed clear to me that we needed to interpret that in many ways as a place that recognises the world of faith is divided, and it's an obvious place to gather together to seek the common hope that we're looking for.
The original story of the cross of nails, that is so beautiful in the sense that a devastating act happened one night, but in the morning, we found hope in the sense of the nails being welded together through fire. And in that, the formation of the cross of nails, which today is international.
And becomes, so that is the real point of the cathedral, that what could have been a symbol simply of destruction became a symbol of hope. It doesn't deny the destruction, but it turns into a symbol of hope, and that hopefully is the story. Partly because it's so big, it has a lot of space, and so hopefully it's sufficient space for people to discover their own meaning.
I think part of that is Coventry reinvents itself every so often, and that's in all fields. So, for example, in education, we had the first sort of, drop-down curves for people that had disabilities. That was in Coventry. We had an organisation that actually worked with providing children for whom English was a second language, and that was set up. So my sort of background in education, multicultural education, and community education was the first here in Coventry about involving parents, schools together with children, working together. Those ideas came from here in Coventry with the help of the various universities. So I think this thing about working together, it's almost like it's in our blood kind of thing. Internationally, we were known as a centre of some of the resources that we produced and all the rest of that. City of Sanctuary, for example, welcoming refugees and asylum seekers. We are a city of sanctuary, but there was a lot of work done here between refugees and asylum seekers and supporting them.
But much of it is prompted by something, if you like, disastrous thing, isn't it? A lot of it is a response.
Persecution.
Yeah, persecution.
Is it like Lady Godiva as well now?
Yes.
Yeah. Going against attacks, but
absolutely.
Finding a way to.
That's right.
An extraordinary story, foundational story of the city, actually, which has obviously become kind of slightly degraded in popular culture, but it is an extraordinary story of somebody standing against wealth and position, as it were. And,
it's about justice and equality,
exactly.
isn't it?
And finding a creative way of expressing that.
And that's the other thing. I think the creativity in the city is extraordinary, and just finding a way, and that keeps manifesting itself in so many different.
I think in that way, it's sort of showing how to demonstrate, how to be against something, but in a peaceful manner, but actually sending the message back to say, actually, this is not fair. To me, Coventry has welcomed and embraced us and my family, and we owe it everything. So, in terms of loyalty,
that's amazing.
But I think many people,
and a lot of people would say that. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived abroad and everything, and came back to Coventry. So I suppose being sent to Coventry, it's really interesting. Yeah. But yes, it does have that draw, and I think now that I am getting older, it's almost like I am comfortable.
Okay.
You know, I don't have the urge to go and live elsewhere at the moment. Who knows?
I think I found, in one word, Coventry to be real. When I traveled around, it was very easy to see how people talk, in a positive way about where they live and what they do and how everything is. But I naturally, I see people kind of like to see everything in pink glasses. I found Coventry to be real. People know exactly what city they live in, how everything is working here, why they're helping each other, because if we're not going to help each other, it's not going to happen from anywhere else. And I found Coventry to be comfortable in that way. It makes you feel like home.
That's a good word, real.
Yeah, it's really good.
Not pretending to be.
Pretentious.
I think one of the reasons why things work quite well in Coventry is because actually a lot of the different faith groups do have quite a strong identity. Because it's not about saying everybody's the same. That's not actually helpful. You don't get a rich relationship. A rich relationship is made of being aware of your differences and engaging with them. And I think for me, one of the reasons why interfaith work is so important is because faith gets so bound up with cultural identity. So somebody will say to me, almost every other week, religion is the reason for all the problems in the world. And you say, no, it's really not. True religion really is not. As it were, cultural expressions of religion can be problematic because they reinforce tribal identity. And that just takes me into thinking that true religion, as people have often said, is about finding wells rather than building fences. And so it's quite easy to move between different wells and kind of discover what other people's wells are if you're free to move. If you kind of throw up fences around yourself, then that's where the problems.
Why we believe we're so different when we're actually not.
It takes courage to admit that there is a difference and to step into that grey. And have some kind of doubt, maybe an expression of doubt, to say, I have more to learn, more to embrace and more to reflect on, is actually quite a decision to make, isn't it? So as we go into the future and we think about our young people, we just hope that they have a bit more potential courage to explore their own spiritual dimension as well as explore other people's from which they could learn.
I think that that's a fabulous way of approaching work with younger people, because I think that faith communities can be, if they're driven by fear, they can be very wary of interfaith work because they are scared that people will lose their identity. My experience of being in Coventry, which has been the richest interfaith experience of my working life, is that actually it's strengthened my Christian identity in ways that I would not have anticipated. It's helped me identify the things that I really value in my faith, because if you live with something all the time, you can cease to value it because you don't notice it, But I think that's been really helpful. And my wife is a hospital chaplain working in an interfaith team, and she often quotes one of her Muslim colleagues who says, one of my roles in this team is to help you to be the best Christian that you can be, and to enable and to receive your helping me to be the best Muslim I can be. And that's been an immensely rich way of engaging for me.
Actually encountering people who ask you questions
exactly
only deepens, I believe,
absolutely
one's own beliefs, and says, why do I do the things I do?
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. So one of the challenges is how it's lovely for us to sit here secure in our own faith tradition and enjoying having learned so much, enjoying learning from each other, but we can't simply deliver this to a new generation.
Thank you for watching our films. These were put together by lots of different individuals who came together into this group of people who are committed to Coventry as a city, who've lived here, all their lives, for most of their life, or who arrived here, at different junctures. I arrived here in 2006, so almost 18 years, and Coventry has become my adopted home. In 2020, we were the city of culture. The city was raft with all sorts of events and art and installations and whatnot. But one event that stood out for me was, it was part of Interfaith programming, and all the places of worship opened themselves to people, irrespective of whether they belonged to that particular faith or not. I remember driving past some of these places of worship, feeling that I understood my place in the city, and feeling also that the city was willing to accept me on my own terms as a brown, hijabbed, youngish maybe, or not that young, Muslim woman. And that is invaluable, that sentiment. And that sentiment, I know, is reflected by all the people whom you've listened to in the video. And it is my hope that by listening to these people, you can form a sense of your place in Coventry, your belongingness in Coventry, your home in this city. But thank you very much for coming on this journey with us, with people who came to Coventry in the 50s and the 60s, people who then settled in Coventry and made it their home, the city that became Coventry. And as we journey into the future and continue to build the city of our dreams and of our lives. Thank you very much.